The twin flame connection is not an ordinary love. It's a sacred bond that transcends the boundaries of the physical world, touching the soul in places that most human relationships never reach. When two twin flames meet, there's a profound sense of recognition, as though you've finally found the other half of your own essence. The connection feels electric, magnetic, and deeply familiar. But as beautiful as it is also one of the most challenging experiences a soul can encounter. This connection awakens both individuals. It pulls up every shadow, every wound, and every hidden fear that has been buried within. And because of that, one twin, often the divine masculine, finds himself running or pulling away, even as his heart aches for his counterpart. To the divine feminine, this behavior can feel confusing and painful. She can sense his longing, his inner turmoil, youth, and even his unspoken love. Yet he remains distant, almost as if he's fighting against the very thing his soul desires most. But why does this happen? Why would someone who feels so deeply connected, so drawn, and so emotionally tied to another person choose distance over closeness? To understand this, we have to look beyond human reasoning and enter the spiritual layers of this connection, where fear, healing, and transformation intertwine in ways that are often hard to grasp from a surface perspective. Number 1. The fear of losing control. One of the most profound reasons the divine masculine pulls away is his deep fear of losing control. The connection he feels with the divine feminine is unlike anything he's ever experienced. It's not logical, it's not predictable, and it's certainly not something he can manage, the way he's been conditioned to handle relationships in the past. The intensity of this bond disrupts everything he thought he knew about love, and that alone can be terrifying. Most divine masculines have spent a large part of their lives learning how to control their emotions, to appear composed, rational, and grounded. They've been taught that vulnerability is weakness, that emotions should be handled privately, and that strength means keeping everything together. But when he meets his divine feminine, all of that comes crashing down. Suddenly, he feels emotions he can't suppress. He feels seen in ways he's never been seen before, and it leaves him exposed, naked before her soul. This exposure shakes his sense of control. It's as though he's standing on the edge of an emotional cliff, unsure whether to leap into the unknown or retreat to solid ground. His instinct for self-protection kicks in. He tells himself that distance is safety, that if he can just create some space, he'll regain his balance. But what he doesn't realize at first is that his soul doesn't want balance. It wants transformation. When he misses his divine feminine, the pull becomes unbearable. He might replay memories, feel her presence in dreams, or even sense her energy throughout his day. But at the same time, that same longing reminds him of the loss of control he felt in her presence. How she could make him feel powerful and powerless at once. So he stays away, not because he doesn't care, but because the intensity overwhelms his capacity to stay grounded. To navigate this stage, the divine feminine must learn not to chase or demand clarity. Her role is to embody calm, stability, and trust. The more she grounds herself in self-love and acceptance, the more energetically safe it becomes for him to return. The masculine energy gravitates toward calm, not because he needs to be fixed, but because he needs to feel that it's safe to surrender. Number 2, the mirror of unhealed wounds. Twin flames mirror each other at the soul level. This means that whatever is unresolved within one will be reflected back by the other, not out of cruelty, but out of divine purpose. When the divine masculine meets his counterpart, she reflects back to him the parts of himself he's avoided, denied, or suppressed. This can be both enlightening and deeply uncomfortable. He may begin to see his insecurities, his childhood wounds, his emotional blocks, and his fears about love and worthiness. The divine feminine's unconditional love and spiritual awareness act like a mirror, forcing him to confront his shadow. But the masculine energy, by nature, prefers structure and stability. He often avoids emotional chaos. So instead of facing these deep inner wounds, his instinct might be to run from them. When he misses her, the pain of separation amplifies these wounds even more. He may feel unworthy of her love, ashamed of his emotional avoidance, or fearful that he'll never be able to meet her expectations. The distance becomes his way of protecting himself from his own reflection. He's not rejecting her. He's rejecting the version of himself he sees through her eyes, the one that still feels broken or incomplete. This phase is crucial because it triggers his inner awakening. The loneliness he feels without her becomes a mirror too, one that forces him to look inward and begin his healing. Eventually, he starts to realize that he can't run forever. The connection calls him to evolve, and as painful as it is, separation becomes the crucible of transformation. The divine feminine, during this time, must also face her own mirrors. Often, her pain comes from abandonment wounds, unhealed patterns of attachment, or the belief that love requires suffering. When she begins to heal these parts of herself, she not only grows stronger, but also sends a vibrational message of healing to her counterpart. The twin flame connection is energetic. One's healing inevitably influences the other. Number 3, the pressure of spiritual responsibility. Another reason the divine masculine remains distant when he's missing his feminine is the immense spiritual pressure he feels from this connection. At some point, he begins to understand, consciously or subconsciously, that this is not a normal relationship. He senses its sacredness, its depth, and its purpose. This realization can make him feel unprepared and even unworthy of the mission. The divine masculine often carries a strong sense of duty in his soul blueprint. He wants to protect, provide, and lead. But within the twin flame connection, those instincts take on spiritual weight. He begins to feel responsible for her emotions, for the connection's progress, and for being the one who should have it all together. Yet, the awakening process shows him that he doesn't have all the answers. He feels lost, confused, and spiritually exposed. This inner conflict leads to guilt. He might believe he's failing her by being distant, but he also feels that staying close before he's ready will hurt her even more. So paradoxically, his absence becomes an act of care, though it doesn't feel that way to the feminine. He pulls away because he needs to grow into the version of himself that can fully honor the connection. While he's distant, he's often in deep introspection. He questions his path, his values, his purpose, and what love truly means. He may throw himself into work, distractions, or solitude to regain a sense of control. But beneath it all, his soul is being restructured. The old masculine identity, built on ego, pride, and external validation, must die before the awakened masculine can be born. The divine feminine, during this stage, must remember that her twin's distance doesn't mean the connection is over. The silence is his way of integrating spiritual lessons he cannot yet articulate. By trusting the process and focusing on her own spiritual growth, she gives the masculine space to rise into alignment. Every ounce of love she gives to herself strengthens the energetic bridge between them. Number 4, emotional overwhelm and the need for solitude. The divine masculine's emotional world is often quieter on the surface, but immensely deep beneath. Many masculine energies are not used to expressing emotions freely, especially ones as intense as the twin flame bond stirs. When he misses his divine feminine, that longing can feel like a tidal wave. It floods his emotional body with sensations he doesn't know how to process, and so he pulls back, seeking solitude. This solitude isn't about rejecting love, it's about survival. The masculine mind often needs silence to process, to think, and to make sense of chaos. The emotional surge of missing his feminine can feel like losing control of his inner equilibrium. So he isolates himself, not because he wants to forget her, but because he's trying to find his center amidst the emotional storm. During this time, he might seem cold or detached on the surface, but internally, he's struggling with intense emotions: love, regret, confusion, and fear, all colliding at once. His solitude becomes a spiritual cocoon. Within it, he's slowly learning to understand his emotions rather than run from them. This is where he begins to mature emotionally, developing the strength and clarity needed to reconnect from a place of authenticity rather than fear. For the divine feminine, this stage often triggers doubt. She may feel abandoned or question whether he ever truly cared. But it's important to understand that the masculine silence is not indifference. It's his way of learning emotional self-regulation, a necessary step for the union to be healthy and balanced. By giving him space and trusting that his love exists even in silence, she nurtures the energetic connection without interfering with his growth. Instead of focusing on what's missing, she can redirect her energy into creativity, spiritual practices, or self-expression. This not only uplifts her vibration, but also subconsciously reassures him that she's stable, that her love is not dependent on his presence, but rooted in spiritual knowing. This balance between independence and connection creates the harmony the twin flame union needs to thrive. Number 5. The awakening of the masculine ego. Ego death is one of the most intense aspects of the twin flame journey, especially for the divine masculine. When he meets his feminine, her presence challenges his ego on every level. Suddenly, the ways he's identified himself, through career, status, logic, or control, start to crumble. She doesn't care about his masks, she sees directly into his soul. This spiritual nakedness confronts him with truths he's spent lifetimes avoiding. At first, his ego resists. The mind tells him it's safer to stay in control, to distance himself, to rationalize the connection away. But deep down, he knows he's fighting something sacred. This internal battle between ego and soul can create emotional turbulence. He might miss her so much that it physically hurts, yet his pride, fear, or confusion holds him back from reaching out. The masculine ego often views surrender as defeat, but in the twin flame path, surrender is the very key to awakening. Unfortunately, this realization doesn't come easily. The ego must break piece by piece, through separation, reflection, and deep emotional pain. His longing for her becomes the fire that melts his resistance, teaching him humility and vulnerability. This phase can make him act cold, indifferent, or even dismissive, but these are defense mechanisms, the ego's attempt to maintain power. In reality, he's struggling between who he was and who he's becoming. He misses her not only as a person, but as a reflection of his higher self, and the distance becomes both punishment and protection until he's ready to face himself fully. For the divine feminine, this is the time to step into her own divine power without anger or resentment. By embodying compassion and peace, she becomes a living example of what awakened love looks like. Not clingy or forceful, but unconditional and wise. When the masculine finally breaks through his ego walls, it's this vibration of love that calls him home. Number 6, the fear of rejection and unworthiness. Beneath the masculine's silence often lies a deep fear of rejection. Though he may appear confident, his inner child carries wounds, memories of emotional neglect, criticism, or abandonment. The divine feminine's love shines light on these wounds, making him feel both cherished and terrified. He fears that if he exposes his true self, with all his flaws, mistakes, and imperfections, she might not accept him. This fear can be so powerful that he distances himself preemptively. He convinces himself that she deserves better, that he's not ready, or that she'll eventually see he's not enough. This is not arrogance. It's self-protection born from deep insecurity. Even when he misses her, his mind tells him it's safer to stay away than to risk rejection from the one person who matters most. At this stage, his journey revolves around self-worth. He must learn to love himself as deeply as he loves her, to see himself as divine, whole, and worthy of unconditional love. Until he does, he will continue to oscillate between yearning for her and running from her. The divine feminine's task during this time is to release any energetic patterns of chasing or overgiving. By focusing on her own worth and self-acceptance, she models what true divine love looks like. Love that does not beg, force, or demand, but simply is. Her energy reminds him that love isn't something one must earn. It's something that flows naturally when the soul is aligned with truth. Over time, this inner healing within both twins transforms their vibration. As the masculine learns to see himself through the same lens of compassion his feminine holds for him, his fear of rejection dissolves. And in that moment of inner peace, he finds the courage to return. Number 7, the divine timing of reunion. Ultimately, the reason the divine masculine stays distant, even while missing his feminine, desperately comes down to divine timing. This connection is orchestrated by the universe, not the human mind. Both twins have soul contracts, lessons to learn, karma to clear, and growth to achieve before reunion can occur in harmony. If they come together too soon, the connection can collapse under the weight of unhealed wounds. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, ensures that both are emotionally and spiritually ready before bringing them into lasting union. So even when the masculine feels the pull to reach out, something within him, his intuition, his higher self, holds him back. It's not punishment, it's protection. During this separation, both twins are being refined. The feminine is learning patience, surrender, and self-love, while the masculine is learning emotional awareness, courage, and spiritual responsibility. Their souls are preparing to meet not as wounded halves, but as whole beings who can co-create from a place of unconditional love. When he misses her, his longing acts as a compass guiding him back home, not just to her, but to himself. Each wave of emotion pushes him closer to awakening, peeling away layers of ego and fear. And when the time is right, the universe orchestrates the perfect moment of reconnection. Not forced, not planned, but divinely aligned. For the divine feminine, this understanding brings peace. Instead of waiting in pain, she can live in faith. The connection is eternal. Separation is only an illusion created to serve growth. When she embodies trust, her energy becomes magnetic, and reunion becomes inevitable. The divine masculine's distance, though painful, is not rejection. It's preparation. It's the soul's way of creating space for transformation. When he misses his divine feminine, he's not running from love, but from the parts of himself that are not yet ready to sustain it. His silence, his confusion, and his solitude are all part of his sacred journey back to wholeness. The twin flame path teaches both counterparts the highest form of love, one that transcends attachment, expectation, and fear. It teaches surrender, patience, and unconditional faith. The divine feminine's role is not to fix him, but to hold her light steady while he finds his own. Her strength, compassion, and serenity become his silent guide through the darkness. When he finally returns, it won't be because he misses her, though he does deeply, but because he has become ready to love her in the way their souls always intended, freely, consciously, and eternally. And in that moment, both will understand that the separation was never a punishment. It was the path home.